They were pulling a lot from Dazed and Confused. They were like, we wanted to make
Mm,
Dazed and Confused on an indie budget with our friend Adrian Quesada. So I think it's kind of fun to think of making a soundtracky movie
mm.
like Dazed and Confused without using every song from that era and instead just trying to find the vibes and follow the vibes.
I'm just making music. I've got a new rap album I'm making. I've got one that's almost done and I'm waiting on a
Yeah,
feature. And so in waiting for a feature, I decided to make a new mixtape where I take anime songs and I'm remixing them and making hip hop songs out of them.
amazing. Who just reposted your stuff that I saw on your story? Someone like a soccer game or some
Yeah, yeah,
highlight
yeah,
clip?
yeah, yeah. So there was a DJ who was at an
Okay.
event. He's a local hip hop DJ. And he was like, "Oh man, I love your song." And I was like, "Thanks, man." And then like months later, he was like, "Hey, I'm posting a clip of this." And he's like, "Oh yeah, my daughter and I love this song." And she made it a part, she used it as like the background music for her highlight reel of her flag football team. And I was like, this is so cool. It's like
Yeah.
the coolest thing ever. Like,
I,
I feel like numbers on Spotify are one thing, but having that happen is like so much cooler to me. You know, a family coming together, enjoying the
100%.
music that's being made and having bonds over shared interests in a song that they both think is cool. And that's just like the best thing. Like any bonds
Yeah,
because of songs I'm making is just the best thing.
that's awesome.
Also, I've been loving the spiritual texts
Oh, Sacred Text.
podcast,
Yeah,
sacred
yeah,
text.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. What a great thing. I don't watch all the podcasts that
Yeah.
come out through this, but the sacred text, I'm like, oh, I can't miss this. I've literally been thinking, like, what are my sacred texts? Like all the
Yeah.
time. Cause I'm like, I want to come on and do a sacred text sometimes.
Oh,
So
that'll be fun. Let's talk
yeah.
about the home free original motion picture soundtrack.
So have you watched this movie?
I did. I did.
Okay.
So this movie is about the writer and director's experience at UT Austin. So
Okay.
Lenny and Aaron went to UT Austin. They had this friends group. They moved off campus into a house, and the friend group was like 12 people big. And one of the friends thought it would be really funny to invite this homeless guy to come stay with them at their house during a rainstorm. The next thing you know, they spent a whole year plus of college hanging out with a bunch of homeless people. And they went to their parties and homeless people and sorority girls at their ragers. And they joined the bowling league because one of this guy, he was a professor at the university and then became homeless, and they called him the professor, and he was kind of this mentor figure to a bunch of college students. So the movie's about that. It's a coming of age stoner comedy situation, and it's based in real life, which is cool. And the whole connection to this LP is they went to UT Austin with Adrian Quezada, and they're friends with them from Black Pumas.
Okay. I was like, what? This seems like a pretty like indie film vibe. Like, how do you get Adrian Casada on this? That makes
Yes.
sense. Okay.
Yep. So that's the background. And in talking to them, they said one of the biggest selling points has been the album. They've actually done a music festival in Austin for only homeless people with Adrian Quezada performing and some of the people on this album. So
Oh, sick.
kind of cool. It's a music with a message, movie with a message, very much an impactful story. And they're hyped about this album, which is why we're talking about it today.
That makes sense because I feel, and I'm gonna like lay out my thoughts as
Yes.
I receive this. Okay.
Yep.
Uh, so we're gonna go through like timeline. So I got a text after an email that said like, "Hey, do you have a vinyl player?" And I said, "Yes, I have a
Mhm.
vinyl player." And you said, "Great, I'm sending you a vinyl." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then I got it and I was like, well, what's going on with this? Like,
Sorry.
how are we approaching this? And so then you're like, hey, we're going to do a podcast on this. And I was like, great. So then I listened to the vinyl. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. And I noticed the Beastie Boys name. So I'm like, how did they get Beastie Boys? And then I tried to find it on Apple Music so that I could also listen to this in other situations, not just in my room on vinyl.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find it on Apple Music.
It is on Spotify, but you're right. I don't think it is on Apple Music.
Which is fine. But
Yep.
I was just like, okay, I can't find this. So I looked up Adrian Quesada, and then I was like, oh shoot, this is the guy from Black Pumas. I'm like, no wonder they have such big names on the album
Yeah.
because it's the dude from Black Pumas.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
He
saying?
called his friends.
Yeah. He called his friends. And here's the thing too. You're doing a movie that is about homeless people and where a lot of proceeds go to help, the homeless and unhoused. I think unhoused is a weird word, by the way.
It is, yeah.
I'm not into it. No. And the homeless people I'm friends with, or people who have been homeless that I'm friends with, they're like, no,
Yeah.
I was homeless, not unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two different things. And I'm like, oh yeah, they kind of are.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, all the press release and publicity for this film and album say homelessness. It
Thank
humanizes homelessness, so we're good to use homeless.
Thank goodness. Okay, cool. Because I think they're great people. Like I've hung out with homeless people. They're dope. So then I saw it was, Adrian Quesada from Black Pumas. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. I'd already been listening to it and thought, hey, this is really cool and interesting. And then I saw that and I was like, oh, this makes sense how he got so many big people. But in the end, it's just like, is the music good or not?
Yeah.
And I think the music's really interesting. And at first I was also thinking, what type of soundtrack is this going to be? Is it going to be all songs type of soundtrack, or is it going to be very instrumental focused? And I quickly realized it is very instrumental focused, but it's instrumental focused in a very commercial type of instrumental way, not as much in the kind of classical idea of soundtracking, right?
Yeah.
So you have a lot of really cool hip hop tracks.
Mixmaster Mike.
And the hip hop tracks feel more organic. There's definitely a trend toward a more organic sound over a more electronic sound. Which I thought was cool. And even while listening to it, I'm like, oh yeah, this seems like the type of stuff you'd expect cool kids in college to be listening to.
Well, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it kind of fits the vibe of what the story is here.
Yes, 100%. Because I was like, yeah, is this what I was listening to in college? No.
Yeah.
I wasn't a cool kid. Yeah, but the cool kids listened to a lot of folk.
Yeah.
Like, folk was really big, at least when we were in college. There was a huge folk revival around that period. Which is funny because I'll talk to young kids now and I talk to them about Bob Dylan and they have no idea who I'm talking about. Even with the movie, they don't know who Bob Dylan is because there hasn't been a folk revival in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We kind of hit our moment, then it moved along.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're all like, oh, yeah, like we love Bob Dylan. We love the whole like folk movement of the 60s. It was very similar to the folk movement of the early 2010s. And then they just don't care. They weren't in college at that point when it was popping. So I heard folk music and I was like, oh yeah, this seems like cool college kid music.
Yeah, it's interesting because they were talking about how it sounds like the bands that they loved when Lenny and Aaron went to school. And they were like, that's kind of what we were hoping Adrian would pull together. So while watching the movie, it feels like it fits. This is what they'd have on their radios, like you're saying. This doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel too modern and it doesn't feel too old either. It feels somewhere in between of like in kind without being a total ripoff. And it's instrumental, so you're not having the lyrics. But
and did they go to college around the same time we did, like the early 2010s?
No, so they're like late 90s, early 2000s.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess this is just what cool college kids listen to for like a 20-year period.
They had cool professors who introduced them to their same music, and there you go,
Yep, that actually makes a lot of sense because a lot of professors I knew also really liked folk music, and that was a big thing. Did you feel like that was a big thing at BYU campus, that a lot of people listen to folk music?
Yeah, also Provo was producing a lot of folk acts at the time, and it was such a vibe there.
Like the national parks?
The national parks was really big. Even there's
your
like
one friend. What was your friend's name?
Caleb. Yeah. Yep. Caleb Darger. The Mighty Sequoias. Yeah, I had other friends producing music. They were either trying to sound like Dr. Dog, which I love Dr. Dog, or they were going down different paths of how do we, as close as we can to, of Monsters and Men, Lumineers, and Mumford and Sons, but do our own thing. So I loved like The Archer's Apple and Holy Water Buffalo. Just all these like weird acts around Utah that were like, we're that, but we're not that.
I feel like it was either that or they were trying to sound like Imagine Dragons.
Yeah.
They were trying to sound like that kind of like arena alt rock vibe.
Yeah. Fictionist.
I don't remember the bands. Oh, Fictionist. Fictionist was totally Fictionist was a little more artsy, though. They were a little more Radiohead influenced, I feel like, than they were Imagine
Oh,
Dragons.
that makes sense. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I like the Fictionist, though. They were
I do
sick.
too. Yeah. And Robert is still touring with the Killers, if that tells you anything. So,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because he's playing bass for them.
He plays, I think, mostly keyboard, but he does a little bit
Okay.
of guitar and bass as well.
Okay, because Ted does guitar touring for them.
Yeah.
And Ted's a guy in the local Vegas scene here.
That's
He
fun.
does a lot of local singer-songwriter type shows. He's really cool.
Yeah.
Nice guy. But I felt like it was folk and pop rock. So if we were to make a movie of our time, I feel like the music would mostly be folk and pop rock, but that's partially because not getting good hip hop influences there.
Do you remember B Money, the rapper, the Provo rapper?
I do remember B Money.
He'd go knocking door to door like a salesman, bringing out his CDs and telling you to listen to him. And you're like, who is this guy?
What a hustle.
What a hustle.
I think part of the reason folk was so big in the BYU area too is because there's not a lot of venues in that area.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it has to be done in people's backyards and stuff. And folk lends itself really well to that vibe.
It's true. I guess I'm trying to think of anything that was not folk, and I don't have a lot of context there. A lot of backyard shows, a lot of house shows.
Yep.
A lot of random, very like one girl brought like a dulcimer sounding thing and a ukulele, and that's all she had for 40 minutes.
But the musical talent there is so crazy. Like the singing talent, especially. The rhythmic talent is kind of crap. But the vocal talent in that area is incredible. So you'd get really great stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought the folk stuff on this was really, really cool. I think, like you said, it didn't sound too old. It didn't sound too new. It sounded like just like classic type stuff. And I think that's partially because of that organic approach. Like they're going for a very organic approach on this album.
Yeah, when I interviewed Aaron and Lenny, and I was like, how did you even get Adrian Quesada involved? And they were like, oh, we're friends. They just mentioned that because this movie was produced and shot during COVID, they started late 2019 into 2020, paused for all the COVID stuff, picked back up late 20, early 21. Adrian Quesada had just finished a tour and could not go on a tour. So he's like, sign me up. I'm going to call all my friends. We're going to make music during COVID. So it was kind of this perfect marriage of timing and circumstance to create this big album full of features. And
actually makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Dude, man, I hate COVID, but it produced some sick music.
Yeah, interesting what happens when we all have to stay inside.
Yeah, when you don't force artists to tour all the time.
Yeah.
You know? Which is kind of how, if people are ever like, why don't I get new music all the time? Most of the time it's touring. Playboy Cardi is a little bit different, but I don't know what his thing is, why he doesn't release music more often. But a lot of people, it's because they're touring so often.
Not to bring up the Beatles like every song discussion has to bring up. But when they stopped and then just made album after album, when they paused after their big American tour, that's when you get some of the greatest music. Like, oh, yeah, give them a minute to breathe and think about the music they want to write.
Totally. And taking the same vibe of going to Beach Boys when Brian Wilson was just at home alone and he was like, I'm done touring.
Yeah.
That's when you get Pet Sounds, and that's when you get a lot of the really great stuff. I mean, Pet Sounds is kind of the real contribution Beach Boys made, although all their hits are, I think, sick.
Of course, yeah.
I think like Help Me Rhonda is dope.
Did any of the tracks on this album speak to you more than the rest of them?
Yes. A lot of them, it was hard to say, oh, I really like this one because I feel like they kind of blend together.
Yeah.
I expected that I was going to like the Beastie Boys ones more, but that wasn't the case. I thought they were good, and they added a really smooth hip hop element to the album, but they were mostly instrumental. I thought Centrifugal was a great song.
Centrifugal forces moving me along. I don't got nowhere to go. If I do, I don't wanna know.
I listened to that one. I was like, oh, this is the cool song off this album. Like, this is a really interesting one by Stephanie Hunt of Buffalo Hunt, which is a great name for a group.
Oh,
That was the one where I was like, oh, I want to listen to more of this stuff. I hope it's similar sounds. I don't know if it's more, if she's more of a folksy thing and they just had programmed drums for the track. But I thought her voice in that kind of mix between electronic and organic soundscape sounded really, really good. And I liked the way her vocals were produced a lot. I just thought that song was a total hit. The other one that I kind of noticed, just because you can't not notice it, and if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at the track listing right now, was Today.
Yeah, the final track.
The final track was interesting, but the problem in my brain is I grew up on Smashing Pumpkins. I didn't realize that there was a beef between Nirvana and the Smashing Pumpkins, but it totally makes sense that there was, because in my family, we basically don't listen to Nirvana.
Really?
Growing up, the only song I listened to by Nirvana was the one on Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
Today is the greatest day I've ever known. Can't live for tomorrow. Tomorrow's much too long. I'll burn my eyes.
Okay? Or Come As You Are, because it was just like on radios and stuff.
Yeah.
But we didn't pull out Nirvana stuff. Smashing Pumpkins, on the other hand, we listened to the crap out of them. Like, my whole family, like not just me and my like immediate family, but like my whole extended family, we all like listened to the Smashing Pumpkins.
Grant me, bored by the chore.
Yeah, so it was hard to get the Smashing Pumpkins version of Today out of my brain.
Today is the greatest day I've ever known. Can't wait for tomorrow. I might not have that long. I'll tear my heart out.
So I'm listening to it and I'm like, this is good. It's just not Billy Corgan,
Yeah.
who, although insane, is a great artist.
Sometimes the best ones are.
Oh my goodness, so many of them are so crazy. Have you gotten into the Scott Stapp stuff?
No.
He's apparently completely insane. The guy from Creed. Yeah, like schizophrenic type insane. Thinks he's talking to God all the time.
Oh,
Because
wow.
of drugs. Yeah, it's great. Harley was telling me about it the other day, and I was like, ooh, I wanna dig into that one more.
Well, when you guys are ready, we'd love to have an episode on that. Substance abuse, legal issues, mental health struggles. Oh, yeah.
We should, Harley and I should totally do a couple episodes where we just talk about the crazy people in music and
That
how
would be
much we
fun.
love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're huge fans of Courtney Love as well. She's probably one of the most insane. Her and Kanye. Yeah, but this has hip hop on it, so it's not the craziest thing.
We stay high, smoking on good weed. No sticks, no steams, no seeds. And that's all that we need to live the life that we need. We stay high, smoking on good weed. No sticks, no steams, no seeds. And that's all that we need to live the life that we lead. Here comes another one in rotation. Taking blunts to the face, mental relaxation. Hold up, I'm about to pass that.
Yeah, I thought the guitar work was really, really cool throughout too. There was a lot of really interesting guitar work. And I feel like it was cool when like the guitar and like the funk and the hip hop, which I mean, Black Pumas, so it makes sense when it all blended together. I thought the folk tracks were really great. A lot of the folk singers were really talented, and I liked the way that their vocals were edited, because I feel like a lot of the times folk singers have just kind of like that over reverb type of thing, and there's not really incredible guitar work going on necessarily, especially not electric guitar work.
Yeah.
Even though I think there's a long history of great guitar work in folk music, the band being, I think, the best example of that, because their guitarist was legendarily incredible, you know? And then Americana music, you have some of the great guitar players. But I thought the guitar work and the vocal treatment of folk singers into a more rock, alt rock context was really cool. So I thought that was super interesting.
Someday gonna know the truth till the answer comes. Gonna tap my fingers. Someday gonna know the truth till the answer comes. Gonna tap my fingers. I've got that look painted on my face.
And I see why people are attracted to this because of the soundtrack.
Yeah, the fact they're selling it as a double LP and they're doing a lot of publicity around it tells you what they think of it and how they're putting stock in it. It's fun to see on Spotify just the different tracks that have the most listens. Today being the one with the most listens as far as the numbers we see here. And
really?
Then Centrifugal.
Oh, okay. So I was right. I was right about
right.
Centrifugal.
Yeah.
Today's only getting listens because it's Today, and people are like, oh, it's another version of Today I can listen to.
Yeah. Easier to find when you search and stuff. The third one is Tent City, which I really like that track.
That's a good track.
It's a little more, I don't know what to say, a little more hippie hop, old 90s kind of stuff.
Now everywhere I walk is Sin City. While the will to do just what they wanna do. Step across the line like shit's pretty. See another coat of paint won't cover up the blood and the lies when it gets gritty. It's a jungle in the streets, drug needles to the beat, baby sucking on a BTD. While we're shuffling our feet, can't stop, gotta work, gotta eat. Politicians talk jack, pull a rabbit out of hat. I tell her tricks is for kids and watch the whole shit collapse. Empty promises.
I've listened to a lot of A Tribe Called Quest, so therefore I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. You know,
Tribe Called Quest. Obviously, I listen to a lot of hip hop as well. Yeah. By necessity.
By necessity.
I think in general, because if you look at it just from like an LP standpoint, that's the second side of the first LP. And I think that's actually the strongest side. I was going to say that earlier, just like all of those songs, if that was just an EP, like that would be, if these were all EPs, you know, these 4 sides, I think that would be the strongest EP.
Yeah.
It's super good, that whole side. Do these follow like the vibe of the movie? Like were these tracks played in that order? Okay, cool.
Very little feels out of place while you're watching it. It's the kind of soundtrack, and I know I talked to the directors about this. It's the kind of soundtrack that at certain moments you almost forget it's there because it feels like it's so perfectly paired to the movie. Nothing feels dissonant throughout the entire movie. You're not like, oh, this doesn't match this, or this is a calming scene and that's off. It very much feels just like the flow of the movie, which is fun. And also, they were pulling a lot from Dazed and Confused. They were like, we wanted to make Dazed and Confused on an indie budget with our friend Adrian Quesada. So it's like, okay, instead of paying for a bunch of old tracks, they just said, here's our time frame, here's what we're looking for, go wild. So I think it's kind of fun to think of making a soundtracky movie like Dazed and Confused without using every song from that era and instead just trying to find the vibes and follow the vibes.
The vibes are immaculate, though. What's really incredible to me is that there's so many genres. Like, well, there's not so many genres. It's mainly just like hip hop and folk and like an alt rocky blend of the two, which I feel like hip hop and folk are very different genres.
Yeah,
and that they should not work so well side by side.
and yet,
never feels like, oh, this is weird. And it feels like this is all on the same playlist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which is crazy because it shouldn't. Because folk music normally doesn't fit on the same playlist as hip hop music. And when I'm booking bands or booking acts for a thing, I normally don't put the hip hop acts right next to the folk acts.
Little different audiences normally, or just a different vibe.
Yeah, it's just a different vibe because I mean, a lot of my friends who are really into hip hop love folk music, and a lot of my friends who are really into folk music like hip hop music. So it's like there is crossover, but just the vibes are not the same.
Yeah,
not the same at all. But in this, they're the same, which speaks to the credit of Quesada.
Yeah. Listening to this, and I know you've been producing and bringing a lot of people in. If you had to score a movie, what lessons would you take from what you've listened to on this LP?
I did think about that as I was writing it, funny enough. And I also thought about our buddy Yoni.
Oh yeah, who's scoring
Who
something
scores
right now?
movies. Yeah. He's scoring a big old film right now. I think he says like an 88-minute feature.
Oh my gosh. Wow, no pressure.
Yeah, seriously. He's doing a lot of documentary work. He's having so much good success, and I'm so happy for him. But how would I score something if I was to score something? And I think in general, I would take the approach of do what you know and make it fit.
Ooh, okay.
Which I think is what happened here. Because as they approached someone like Adrian Quesada, he could have said, "Oh, I'm going to make a big John Williams-esque thing and explored like a new territory," or even said, "I'm going to make something very Trent Reznor-esque. Like I'm going to start exploring synths for this because I really love how Trent Reznor scores a film."
Yeah.
I'm speaking as if I were Adrian Quesada.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't do that. He said, "Oh, I want to use the tools I already have at my disposal, the things I already know how to make, and I'm going to make them together with friends for a movie."
Yeah.
Which is a really smart way, I think, to approach things. So if I'm making a movie, yeah, I'm going to try a few new things that I maybe don't try in a normal in a normal music making context. But, there's going to be a lot of piano.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoy playing the piano as a musician. And so there's going to be a lot of piano driving stuff. There's going to be a lot of hip hop influence because I really dig the hip hop thing. Unless they said, we want no electronic drums, and I'd be like, okay, do you have the budget for real drums? And they'd say, yep. And I'd be like, great. Then I'd get, someone like Joe Kennedy or some other really talented drummer like Amy to help with the drum work.
Mm.
But otherwise I do electronic drums. And I think that would be great. I think, just do what you know and try to fit the vibe.
Which I think, to your point, it doesn't sound like Adrian or anyone involved on this is going out of pocket, out of their range. Yeah.
Yeah. No, out of pocket. Like they're staying in the pocket.
Yep.
They're saying, I know this. I know how to do this. I'm good at this. I'm going to do it. And that's how you produce great stuff. Although sometimes you produce great stuff by going into a genre that you don't have as much experience with.
And what's a good example of that in your mind? I mean, Beyonce Cowboy Carter, is that...
Yeah, Beyonce Cowboy Carter, I think, is a great example. That's a perfect example. That's someone who is not a country artist deciding, I'm going to make country music and it's going to be great. I think Billy Bob Brothers Band is another great example.
That is a great example.
Where it's two people who are not normally country involved, and yet they make one of the greatest country EPs of all time. And it's very different sounding, and it's very weird sounding because it's coming from a place where the people don't necessarily have experience in that. And they're trying something that's outside of the realm of their understanding. I would even say my own hip hop projects, I like hip hop, and I've learned a lot more about it since then. But the range of artists I was familiar with, especially in the underground scene, was incredibly limited and still is fairly limited in terms of who's like the biggest artist in the underground scene. Like Atmosphere is one of the biggest underground artists of all time. I've listened to maybe like 4 or 5 Atmosphere tracks total.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I should be someone who's a lot more versed. I listen to a lot more, East Coast and Midwest stuff. And so my stuff's going to sound a little more like that, but you're going to get different flows and different vibes because of that. Or you take someone like Hobo Johnson, who is this white kid who doesn't seem like he's doing things exactly how you would expect in hip hop. And it's fitting more that alt rock, alt pop type of vibe, because he probably listened to a little bit more of that. I'm sure he listened to a lot of hip hop as well, but his flows are very distinct, I think, because he's coming from a really different background. And I think that can be helpful. And I think it can be helpful to challenge yourself and go outside of what you're comfortable with, Even taking Trent Reznor as an example. I mean, you listen to Soul, which he scored, and that sounds nothing like a 9 Inch Nails album.
Yeah.
You know, not even close.
Mm-hmm.
I think Social Network sounds a lot more like a Nine Inch Nails album. Like it has a lot more of the things you might expect from a Nine Inch Nails album, but Soul does not.
So a little bit of stretching and a little bit of what you know
Yeah.
really helps to kind of diversify the sound.
Going with the Trent Reznor example on Soul, you know,
Yeah.
it still has a lot of really great synth work. Like the synths are still the emphasis. It doesn't go for that industrial sound at any point.
Fits the vibe in the picture while still using his own sensibilities.
Yeah. And I think that's also partially because he had that collaboration with John Baptiste for that movie,
Yeah.
which gave it that really strong jazz context.
Mm.
And John Baptiste, of course, is a very good artist, and he keeps winning Grammys.
He just can't stop, can he?
He just can't stop. I think his stuff's good. I think people both under and overrate him.
That's interesting. I've seen a lot of the overrating. I tried to watch the doc, couldn't get through it. I like his stuff, but maybe not that much.
I think he's really, really talented, and some of his stuff I really like. And I think the general public doesn't recognize his talent enough.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think the artsy scene acts like he's Mozart reincarnated.
Yeah.
Which I don't like either of those viewpoints. I think they're both wrong.
Yeah.
So,
little too much of a pedestal there.
A little too much, but I think he's superb. I mean, his piano skills especially are incredible. And he shares a love for the melodica with me, so he's a wise man.
Wise man John Baptiste.
Yeah, melodica is the best instrument.
You heard it here first. No, you didn't hear it here first. Well,
No,
you
no,
heard
no.
it from Kevin.
You heard it from Kevin now. Yeah, no, but this album was sick. I'm sorry for freaking derailing so often.
No. We're talking music. This is kind of the discussion.
Okay,
I guess
sick.
for anyone listening
Yeah.
who wants to go check this out, whether they're interested in making their own soundtracks or not, go ahead, listen on Spotify. I believe some of it's on YouTube
maybe I just
right
can't-
now. I will put links in the show notes to this album, and we're going to listen to it, as well as some of the other albums we talk about, Cowboy Carter, Billy Bob Brothers Band.
Billy Bob Brothers Band.
Billy Bob Brothers Band. So we will have that in the show notes. Any final notes before we sign off here, Kevin?
Take a break from doing things you normally do and make something weird. And maybe you'll make a dope soundtrack that helps a movie that your friends made.
There you go. What better note to end it on? Thanks everyone for listening, and follow those links in the show notes, and we will catch you again next week.